Hello, and welcome back to 50 States, 50 Murders, the podcast taking you, the listener, on an auditory road trip across all 50 states while we discuss 50 different murders. Thank you all for tuning in this week to episode 21. Dakota, where are we traveling to today?
We're going to be in Oil City, Pennsylvania, looking into the murder of Shauna Howe.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to episode 21. This week's recommendation was a word of mouth recommendation, I believe. Dakota, tell us a little bit about the recommendation we got this week.
Yeah, it came from a coworker of mine, Drew. He asked us to cover PA. That's his home state, and the city is actually where he came from, a little small town. So thank you, Drew, for this week's recommendation.
Yeah, big thank you to Drew for the listen, for the recommendation. And if you are looking to drop a recommendation for us, you can always do that on TikTok, where you can suggest cases, states, ask questions, drop a comment, or, reach out to us personally and let us know where you want us to cover. This week, we're going to be departing from Pierpont, New York. And as mentioned, we are going to be heading to Oil City, Pennsylvania. Oil City is located in the northwest region of Pennsylvania. And as of the 2020 census, its total population was just a little over 9,000 people. So, Dakota, just to kind of give an idea on that number, me and you, we are from Akron, Ohio, and our population was 190,000 people. So, 9,000, I'm thinking that this is a small town. You know what I mean? So, we're talking
Yeah,
about.
we had 1,200 in our high school, and it was like a Division II school. So there's schools in Ohio that had over 2,000.
So, we are days away from Halloween. Personally, for me, my favorite holiday. Always look forward to Halloween. And we're kind of tying the times in with this week's episode. And we kind of touched on this last week, but we're going to really dive into it this week. So, Oil City, they experienced a crime on the Halloween of 1992. And this crime was so severe that it actually led to a ban of nighttime trick or treating that lasted in Oil City for 15 years. So, Pierpont, New York to Oil City, PA makes for a 6 hour, 460-mile drive. This week, we will be discussing the case of Shauna Howe. And this is the same case that, in fact, ended Halloween in Oil City for those 15 years. So, as we always do before jumping into this week's case, let's go ahead and take some time to learn a little bit more about the state we are visiting, as well as some notorious murders from the state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is nicknamed the Keystone State. Now, I saw several different amount of explanations for where this nickname came from, but the one I feel is probably the most legit. Uh, as it goes, Thomas Jefferson declared Pennsylvania as the keystone of the federal union during a victory speech in 1802. And I also saw mention that Pennsylvania was the middle of the original 13 colonies. So it played a key in the colonies and how they work together. So thus it's just locked in as the Keystone State. As always, we got the flag and the state seal. Again, I got to be honest, another state flag that I've never seen prior to doing this. And yeah, it's all right, I guess.
yeah, I'd like to know what's that middle thing in their seal.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll be honest with you, I didn't really do a whole lot of research. This was more so just copying and pasting the image and throwing it on the dock for us. So I'll put it on the TikTok as always, but it's okay. It's a cool
I
flag.
don't think anything in their flag has anything to do with the state.
Nothing screams Pennsylvania to me. Like if I was to look at that, I would have no idea what state that is.
No.
Yeah. Pennsylvania is coming in at 17th out of all 50 states for murder per capita. I feel like that's about right where I would expect it to be. No surprise there as far as Pennsylvania and the murders that they experience per year. Geographically speaking, like I said, we're in Ohio. This is where we're born and raised. Pennsylvania is our next door neighbors to the right of us. We just covered New York last week, so PA is right under New York. And I would say, Ohio, we're declared as like the Midwest region, but I always kind of question that. I feel like we're not in the West, but I'd say PA, looking at a map, I say they're mid-eastern region of the USA. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean they're one state away from being on the coast, so yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Pennsylvania, it's a state that me and you both have some personal experiences in. We've both traveled there a few times in our lifetime, so we have some experiences. For me, this was a tradition that started when I was a child, and I don't really know where this tradition came from. It's a tradition that we no longer do any longer. But when I was a kid, every time around, not for Easter, but around Easter time, my family would drive to Sharon, PA, and it's like literally right on the border of Ohio and Pennsylvania. And the reason we would do this is where the original Quaker Steak and Lube restaurant was. And we just went there every year for the restaurant. And down the street from Quaker Steak and Lube, there was a Daffin's candy store. Have you ever heard of Daffin's before?
Nope, never.
Okay, so it's like a chocolate shop. So we'd always go down there, and they had what they call a chocolate kingdom. And it was just every year they would do a bunch of different chocolate sculptures. So usually for Easter time, like I said, we'd go there and there would always be like a really like a life-size chocolate Easter bunny. I don't know why.
That's
That's just what
interesting. You ever go to the Hartville Flea Market?
yeah.
Like explore everything in there?
But
I've
yeah.
actually I've only been there once, and I was working at the time for the Football Hall of Fame. But they have a chocolate place in there, and they do stuff like that. Like they showed us a football they made, like the official football they made out of chocolate. They gave us like they knew we were coming, so they put the Pro Football Hall of Fame logo in chocolate and gave it to us. It's pretty cool.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I always kind of wonder what they do with the chocolate after it's been sitting there for a couple of days. I mean, would like to think you don't want to waste it, but I also don't know if it's edible after it's just been sitting there for a couple of days. You know what I mean? I don't know if I want to eat it personally. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at these statues in the picture you posted. I don't know who's eating that.
Yeah, right. I guess I'm kind of thinking it just kind of goes to the wayside after it's been sitting there. So, all right. Yeah, so that was a little family tradition. And I'll be honest, I don't really remember when it died out. Um, Quaker Steak and Lube was strictly Pennsylvania. Now we have a few in Ohio. So that's probably why it ended. I mean, there's no reason to drive all the way out there for something you could have here. Uh,
Yeah, there's barely a reason to drive to it from here. No,
yeah,
I've only been there one time.
yeah, Quaker Steak and Lube actually sucks. It used to be really good. I guess you could say that for a lot of restaurants now. Was really solid. Great wings. You know, if you go inside, they're famous for like they have like race cars hanging upside down on the ceiling. Used to be great food, but yeah, I've been there like two times in a row, and it's been terrible. So yeah, no reason to really go
I
there longer.
I went on a date once there, and it was not that good. But my mom keeps asking me to take her there, so I have to make another trip.
Yeah, might be worth another try. So sticking to Pennsylvania, in high school, I actually went on a college trip out in PA. I don't know if you personally remember this or not, but it's pretty random. It was a school of PIA, which was the Pittsburgh Institute of Aeronautics, which basically, long story short, is just a school that builds and repairs airplanes. And if you know me, that's literally the last school that I would ever go to. I'm not a blue collar guy. I don't have a lot of tools in my house. I don't like airplanes. I don't like to fly, even though I will. So just really weird. But I just remember, I don't know if you'll recall this or not. It was a while ago, but when we were in high school, I remember they came to our high school and did like a presentation. And for some reason, the recruiter just did such a good job pitching it that I was like, yeah, I think that this would be really cool to do for my future. And
Wasn't that in Mr. Kramer's class?
yep, yep.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that.
He had a couple different
The
programs.
most random school to ever come visit us.
Yeah. And I drove out there with my family and a friend of mine and his family. We all went out there And within 5 minutes of walking into the building, I realized that, yeah, this isn't for me. I just, the people, the type of people that were there, just everything about it. It
Bunch
just,
of fucking weirdos at this place.
yeah, it was a bunch of weirdos. And I was just like, no,
That's interesting.
yeah. So that's a experience that I have with Pennsylvania that I'll never forget. That was cool though. It makes for a good story. Years ago, me and you, we drove to Pittsburgh for a soccer game. And do you remember that game and who was playing?
Yep, it was Man City and AC Milan.
Okay. I believe Alexis was with us that game too, right? It was the
Yep.
three of us.
Yeah, she came with us.
Okay. So we went out
Yep,
there
that was
for
her first soccer game.
went out to PA for an overseas soccer game that was here in the States, which was really cool. Was that your first time ever going to Pennsylvania? Do you remember?
What year was that? 2014 or 15? Because that was the start of our national tour of going to soccer games. Yeah, that was my first time in PA.
Okay. And I know that the two of us, we traveled to Pittsburgh to see a Virginia Tech football game. And that was pretty cool. That's your favorite college football team. I thought that was a pretty good
Yeah,
time.
that was 2016, so the soccer game was before that.
Okay. That was cool. And then lastly, not that long ago, we had a friend of ours, Tone, who had a bachelor party in PA, did a Airbnb in Pittsburgh, some golfing, gambling, had a really good time. So I think it's fair to say that we're not strangers to PA, or at least Pittsburgh, anyways. We've had our fair share of experiences out there. And all in all, I enjoyed the Keystone State. I've always had a good time going out there. Am I missing anything? Have you been out to PA since for anything?
No, but it is the second most state that I've visited besides Ohio.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So, as far as Pennsylvania, let's talk about some places to see, some things to do. And right off the rip, I have the number one spot as the Independence Park and Liberty Bell. And this is located in Philadelphia, PA. So this is one of the top, if not the top attraction in Pennsylvania. Again, it's Liberty Park. This is where the Liberty Bell is located, and this is the site where the Declaration of Independence was signed. Now, for people who don't know, this is the big bell with the crack in it. And I'll be honest with you, I don't honestly know the exact significance of the Liberty Bell. I just know that it's a big deal. Um, I don't know. Do you have any backstory on that, or are you pretty much the same as me?
Uh, well, don't know the exact.
Bro?
It's kind of sad we don't know this, but
Yeah,
whenever
no.
I think of Liberty Bell, or whenever I think of the Independence Park and Liberty Bell, I think of National Treasure.
Yeah, hey, it's a great movie. It's not the first time we've referenced it on the show. It's a great movie. So, anyways, yeah, you got the big bell with the crack. You have the hall where the Declaration of Independence was signed. And then, sort of as a bonus, there's other several interesting buildings right nearby that you can see all on the same day. You have the Congress Hall, the Old City Hall, and then there's museums. You have the Ben Franklin Museum, and also, Dakota, you got the American Jewish Museum. All right, so that's our first attraction in PA. I'll be honest, been to Pittsburgh multiple times, never been to Philly, so I think that alone would be worth checking out. Philly seems like a wild place, really wild. I see spots on TikTok, and it seems like a crazy place. Fans are crazy, just all in all, seems like a wild place. So I'd be interested to check out Philly, and there's a lot of history out there. It's one of the, I guess you'd say, founding locations of our country, and this has a lot
Yeah,
of.
I'm trying to think. What's that street in Philly that you always see on the TikToks? Um,
Oh, you're talking about Zombie Town?
yeah, yeah.
That's Kensington.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I always see videos of just people on hella drugs, just walking down that street.
Yeah, I'm thinking if you are gonna visit Philly, I'd steer clear of Kensington. That's a neighborhood that you probably don't want to go to. But if you want to see some crazy stuff, just look up Kensington on TikTok and you'll see why. So next up on our list, I have Hershey Park. So this is located in Hershey, PA, and this is a amusement park with 90 acres of plenty of different rides. And the cool thing is there's really something for everybody. There's kiddie rides for people like me who are afraid of roller coasters. There are large scale roller coasters for people like you who like that stuff. There's aquatic shows and even more entertainment. So there's more than a dozen roller coasters. And again, if you don't like roller coasters necessarily, that's totally okay because across the park, with included in your admission, is Zoo America. So it's a park of its own with over 200 species of animals on display. So I thought that was pretty cool. We kind of had something like that here in Ohio. At the time, we had Six Flags SeaWorld, and you'd pay for your admission and you could do both. And it was kind of cool to like jump back and forth between the two. So this one, kind of same idea. You got the amusement park and then you have a zoo. You can kind of see both of them. And if you're from Ohio and you've done Cedar Point so many times, maybe you want to try out a different park. Hershey Park could be that park for you. So I've never been, but it does look cool. I've heard a lot about it. And like I said, I know you're a roller coaster guy, so this might be up your alley.
Yeah, you know something super weird. Speaking of all this, and you mentioning Jog Lake, I got like a suggested thing on Facebook this week, and it was like an amusement park Facebook page, something I've never looked up before, but it was their week spotlight was on the Big Dipper. Like
Oh, okay. Yeah.
it was about the history of the ride, the Big Dipper. Like it was the oldest coaster at Jog Lake. Big wooden thing that they had no seat belts. You had to hang on for dear life or else you'd
Yep.
have fallen out.
Yep.
It was one of the first coasters I rode. Very jerky,
It was the first roller coaster I ever rode. Yeah. Very jerky.
was it?
Yep. First one.
Yeah.
All right. So number three, the last thing I have here, I was on the fence about including this final attraction. I had already listed a historical location with the Liberty Bell at one. However, PA does just hold a lot of weight as far as historical events in our country. And not to mention, me and you are both fans of history, so maybe this is a little bit biased. But that being said, it's got to be the Gettysburg National Military Park. So, located here is the battlefield from the 1863 Civil War. And there's a 3 day battle that took place here, responsible for 51,000 casualties. There's a museum that's located on site that has a lot of different interesting, unique pieces that you can view and helps tell a better story. And maybe you're not quite a history buff. Maybe you didn't enjoy social studies like we did and you're looking for something else. There really is a ton of different things to do or see if you're in PA. But for me personally, I think this would be my top three places to see in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, for sure. This is number one for me. I've never been there, but my parents went there a few years ago and they brought me back a shirt. And funny story, I wore it to work, and this girl at work kept like making fun of me about my Gettysburg shirt. She was calling me Mr. Gettysburg all day. So I haven't
Okay.
wore it since.
Ah,
But since then, she's told me that she wants us to take like a work trip to go there.
oh man, I feel like you got to pull that shirt out and wear it to work tomorrow.
No, no, I
Oh,
think I
it's
retired that.
it's retired. It's gone. Okay. Uh, all right. So, like I said, a lot of different things to see. It was really tough for me, doing my research. This was not a difficult state to pick and choose from, so I really appreciate them making that easy for me. But I think there's a lot to offer, and it's so close to home. So, I feel like for the most part, listeners are pretty local thus far. If you haven't already, check out Pennsylvania. A lot to see, lots to do. So outside of that, as always, we like to talk about some famous murderers before we get to our own personal case. So Dakota, I want to throw it back over to you. Looks like we have three Pennsylvania murderers that we have lined up this week. So let's go ahead and jump into that.
First up, we got a 19-year-old girl by the name of Miranda Barbour who was arrested in 2013 along with her 22-year-old husband for the murder of a 43-year-old man who she lured in using Craigslist. She said she tried this with two other men, but they ended up not showing up. Outside of Craigslist, she claimed to have killed between 22 and 100 people across the country in the previous 6 years, which is insane to me. A 13-year-old, I mean, we've had 13-year-old people killing, but a 13-year-old serial killer is just wild.
That is crazy. And a girl.
Yeah, exactly. But according to her, it was due to her satanic alter ego, which she called Super Miranda. So there's another serial killer name for you.
For Miranda. Okay. Add that to our serial killer nickname list. Yeah.
And her goal was to hurt people who did bad things, which most likely came from the show Dexter. So I don't think it was what she said, an alter ego. She was just trying to mimic they never were able to prove anything other than the 43-year-old.
Okay, so you could almost say she was an anti-hero. She's doing some bad things, but I mean, she had good intentions, I guess. Maybe. I don't know. Justifiable reasons, per se. Okay. Well, that's an interesting way to kick it off.
I wanted to stick with the theme here, with the satanic theme, with our second one. A young serial killer from the early 1900s, Lillian Thornman, was a 13-year-old girl who put a 3-year-old child in an oven and burned him to death. It was found that she had done this to 3 other children who parents previously thought that had just fallen in the oven. And she confessed to all of them, and she said that she was the devil and they needed to burn.
Yikes. Okay. Okay, PA has got some interesting serial killers. How do you fall into an oven?
So early 1900s, their ovens were a lot different.
Okay.
So it was like there were no pictures, obviously, but the description is basically like one that you'd see at a pizza place.
Okay. Sure.
So put them on the rollers and just put them on through, I guess.
Okay. So we got some back-to-back satanic ladies kicking off our famous murders in PA. Looks like we got 2 more that are in a group together. Tell us who we got.
We got 2 guys by the name of Brian Timble and Blaine Norris. They were failed filmmakers who worked together on a low-budget horror film that ended up calling it Through a Hike, and it was called A Ghost Story. Weird. But the film cost $20K, in which they lost after never making any money from it. So they had a plan that they came up with to get the money back. Plan was to kill Trimble's wife and collect the insurance money. So Blaine Norris did just that. He stabbed her 20 times before strangling her.
Hey, that's not a terrible idea. Did it work?
No, it did not.
Oh,
because they both got caught.
Yikes. So in the whole 20K and loss of freedom for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yikes. Not a great idea. Okay. Well, those are some things to do, some places to see, as well as some notorious murders in the state of Pennsylvania. Dakota, you said that this week we're going to be covering the case of Shauna Howe. And I'm going to throw it back to you and let you go ahead and take off with our case of the week.
Yeah, so some things happen that are so catastrophic that they change laws. Many of the cases that we've covered have impacted local law and in some cases national law, such as Adam Walsh's death. And this week's case is one of those kinds. So it's Halloween this upcoming week. Halloween is known for costumes, trick-or-treating. One of the examples of laws changing due to catastrophic events was a little boy in Texas dying in 1974 after he ate some Halloween candy that was laced with cyanide they got from trick-or-treating. This event changed the whole trick-or-treating experience for everyone in the country. I always remember my parents having to check my candy every year when I got home before I could eat any, just so they could make sure that nothing was open or could have been tampered with. This story ended up not being what everyone expected, and it was actually the boy's father who poisoned it. Nonetheless, it still changed trick or treating forever. And as you mentioned, AJ, earlier, our murderer this week has had the same type of effect in the small town of Oil City, which has a population of just under 10,000.
Yeah, real quick to touch on that. I've always, you've always heard the stories about potential candy being tampered with, and personal experience, I learned over the years of me being a child that actually what was going on was my dad was just taking the candy that he liked the most, and then he was just eating it for himself. So yeah, I always kind of thought that the tampering with the candy was an urban legend of some sort.
I'm not letting that slide. I would never let my dad take my damn candy. I worked too hard for it.
Right, right.
Walked too many damn miles.
Yeah, so we'll kind of set the scene here. I don't know if we want to call it a trigger warning. We try our best to avoid murder cases that involve children, obviously. But in this specific case, that's exactly what this is going to be. It's going to be a case based around a child who was murdered in Halloween. So, fair warning.
Yeah, we already talked about a 3-year-old being burnt alive, so let's
Yeah.
keep with it.
Yeah. So let's just keep rocking with it. So, October 27th of 1992, around 8 p.m., Lucy Brown called home to check up on her daughter, Shauna, who had been at a Halloween party, but was informed that she had not returned home yet. Shauna's stepfather, John, waited 30 minutes before getting in the car to search for her. An hour went by with no luck, so we started calling around the hospitals in case of an accident, but still nothing. Lucy arrived home around 10 and knew it was time to call the police. Upon arrival, they were asking questions when they received a call about a local resident that had witnessed a young girl being kidnapped. This is how Lucy found out her daughter was taken. So just kind of imagine that, Dakota. You're at the table with the police officers. You're not trying to overreact just yet. Who knows? Kids being kids. Maybe she's just out being just a kid. Maybe causing
Yeah,
some trouble.
and they didn't know for sure it was her, but
Right,
they
right.
they got the point. It was just a young girl was kidnapped, and
Yeah,
I don't know. A mother knows, I guess.
yeah, yeah. So you're sitting at a table with the police officer, and then his walkie-talkie just starts going off in mid-conversation that there's a report of a child being kidnapped. And yeah, I think you immediately realize like that's your child. And also, I kind of wanted to just make mention of something here. So she was at a Halloween party, and it was a Girl Scouts get together, basically. And we kind of talked about this off the show before earlier in the morning. And my biggest question was that she walked home alone after the party, and it was nighttime. We mentioned she's 11, right? Yeah,
Yes.
11 years old. And just, me and you, once upon a time, we helped coach basketball. And we were coaching high school boys, and I couldn't imagine letting them walk home by themselves or not knowing that they had a ride of some sort. So I got to say, pretty wild and irresponsible for the Girl Scout leaders to just let an 11-year-old walk home by themselves at nighttime. Not saying it's their fault, but I am saying that that's pretty wild that they allowed that to happen. Nonetheless,
That's true. We'll get into why it happened later on, but yeah, it's definitely crazy.
yeah. So Dan Payton witnessed a girl walking alone when a tall guy in a baseball cap ran up on her and grabbed her, then threw her into a car that sped off. The only thing he was able to gather was that this was a small red car.
At that point, the search was on. His roadblocks were set up, trying to find more witnesses or perhaps that red car. They spent the night driving up and down every street, trying to find something. By morning, the whole town was out looking for Shauna. This whole time, Lucy was stuck in the house waiting for a phone call, just in case there was a ransom situation. This was recommended by the police, so it wasn't her voluntarily staying home. She wanted to be out looking for her daughter, but the police made her stay.
Yeah, this was 1992, so it's not like she could be out helping and she's got her cell phone or her Apple Watch glued to her hip, constantly checking for texts or calls. I mean, yeah, this is at a time where you are just stuck to your house phone. So I'm sure that was probably torture, not being able to be out there helping search, just waiting patiently for a phone call that never came through, I'm assuming. So, okay, go ahead and pick it back up.
Right. Now, 2 days pass, no clues, and this decreased the chances that she'd be found alive. This is when a man was out in a wooded area in town and he found a police piece of clothing that belonged to a young girl. John, Shauna's stepfather, was called in to identify the clothing and see if it matched anything, which it did. It was her bodysuit that she wore with her gymnastics costume that she wore the night of the party. Now, as you mentioned, Girl Scout party, she was attending this party at a local nursing home. She was supposed to be picked up by someone around 8 o'clock when it ended, but her mother had forgotten to set up the ride, so that's when her and her friends started walking home. A couple blocks from the house is when the two went their separate ways. That was the last time anyone had seen Shauna alive, other than the witness to the kidnapping.
Okay, so maybe I have to backtrack just a tiny bit then. So it sounds like I don't want to say it was the mom's fault, but it sounds like she didn't necessarily take care of the ride of getting her home. So she was walking with somebody. It's not like she left alone per se. But then it's when they split paths and she went on her own. That was pretty much the last time anyone's seen her. Okay.
Yeah, but she was still walking with another young girl. But
Yeah, if
I mean that.
I almost feel like maybe I even have to double down. If you shouldn't let one 11-year-old girl walk home. You really shouldn't let two 11-year-old girls walk home by themselves. But yeah, not pointing fingers, obviously, but just a very interesting detail when I was looking into this case. Still, no body had been found, but there was still hope. The bodysuit was sent in to be examined, where there was other DNA all over it, indicating that she had been molested. However, all hope was in fact lost the next day when the body of Shauna Howe was found under a bridge by a local man who first saw her shoes on top of the bridge near where her clothing was found. Police knew for a fact that the body was not there the day before, as they had searched the whole area. This could have indicated she was killed that night, and the killer putting her body in the same area was almost a taunt to the police.
Shauna's body was found the day before Halloween, so all festivities were canceled while a child killer was on the loose. The main piece of evidence was DNA on the clothing that belonged to a male. It is rare for a kidnapping to just happen by a complete stranger, so her family members were all tested first. Then everyone who could have been in contact with her, but there was no match ever found. A year passed, police found no additional evidence to convict a killer. They only had what they had known from the beginning: a tall, skinny man kidnapping her, putting her into a small red car. There was focus shifted to the man who found the body, by name Bill Crabtree, who coincidentally drove a small red car. In such a secluded area, it was strange for someone to just stumble across her body, but in the end, his DNA was not a match.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's sort of interesting, I guess. You got the guy finds the body, also happens to have a small red car. Okay. But ultimately, DNA not a match, so he's good to go. He's clear. The next piece of evidence was a call to the station saying the description perfectly matched a Ted Walker. He was someone who worked at a pizza shop that Shauna frequently visited. But strangely enough, his DNA was not a match either. Michael Pruitt was their next suspect. He lived near where she was abducted, and he raised suspicion when he left town the day her body was found. His house was searched, and there was a secret cubbyhole that was found, which could have been where she was kept, as she had scrapes on her knees. But once again, the DNA did not match. Over 100 samples were taken from these suspects over the first 2 years.
100 samples and no matches. 100 samples of 9,000 people.
Yeah, that's very
Pretty much the
disappointing.
whole
I'm sure.
town was getting sampled at that point. Moving on July 30th, 1995, so this was A little under 3 years after Shauna's murder, a police call came in about an attempted abduction in town, the same route that Shauna had walked the night that she was taken. The girl was able to fight off the kidnapping attempt and was able to provide police with help on the suspect. Jim O'Brien was a local troublemaker who was known by police along with his brother Timothy, but they could not be tied to Shauna's murder because they'd been in jail at the time. Now, 2 more years passed to the day, and since the murder, another Halloween come around. Now, police presence was very high around the town. The ban on the trick-or-treating after dark that you mentioned earlier was put into place, and yet another little girl disappeared, but this time out of her own backyard. Shanae Freeman was a 5-year-old girl who had gone missing. Once again, the town had to come together to find a missing girl.
Police kept an eye on people close to the situation because it was at her own home where she was taken when weird behavior was witnessed by a boy comforting Shanae's mother. Nick Bowen was questioned where he immediately admitted to killing Shanae and led the police to her body. This, however, was a 17-year-old boy who would have been much too young to commit the murder of Shauna, so her killer was still on the loose.
Every case that we've covered, there's been at least one cop determined to crack a case. And in this instance, it was a man by the name of Rich Graham. The state detective that started to obsess over the case was able to immediately find clues that were previously missed. It was believed that Shauna was actually alive when she was thrown off the bridge. So she was held captive for 3 days prior to then. But yet no restraint marks were found on her wrists or her ankles, indicating that two or more people were involved, which this whole time that police believed that only one person was involved because only one set of DNA was found. And it basically started the whole process over again. So they went back to previous suspects, one being Ted Walker, the pizza shop worker who had complaints against him for always trying to hug the young female customers. His car was actually found set on fire late in 1992, so a couple months after Shauna's disappearance and murder.
Wasn't a small red car, was it?
It just so happened to be a small red car. So he was brought in for interrogation where police asked him how he first found out about Shauna's murder. His answer was Jim and Tim O'Brien, the troublemaking brothers that told him about it. This would have indicated that they were in fact not in jail, as police believed after their failed kidnapping attempt in 1995.
Rich was told by the local police the two were in jail, but there's actually no record backing this up. So he was able to confirm they were ultimately not incarcerated at the time and were bonded out right before the murder. So he found the brothers, who this time were in jail, to question them. First was Tim, who was in for sexual assault. He was questioned about Shauna and asked for a DNA sample that he refused to give, which ended up not needing to be taken because, as a smart detective would do, he gave him a piece of gum before talking and just used that instead. It was not a match, unfortunately, so he was not the man they were looking for. However, his brother was still a suspect. In February of 2002, 10 years after the murder, his DNA was taken, and it was in fact a match for what was found on Shauna's bodysuit.
The suspect was already in jail for another crime, but police knew that Ted Walker was also involved since he's the one that mentioned the brothers, so he was arrested as an accessory. Ted then told police everything they'd been searching for the previous 10 years. Tim said they walked up to Shauna, asked her if she had any cookies because he knew she was in the Girl Scouts. This would kind of put her at ease before grabbing her and then handing her to Tim O'Brien, who put her in the car that was being drove by Jim. After arriving to Ted's house, the O'Briens took her upstairs where she was continuously assaulted by the brothers. This went on for 2 days before she was thrown off the bridge. An autopsy showed that the cause of death was the blunt force trauma, indicating that Shauna was indeed alive when she was thrown off the bridge that was 33 feet above the water below.
Ted Walker was found guilty of kidnapping and third-degree murder, sentenced to 30 years where he died in prison in 2022. Jim and Tim O'Brien were also found guilty of kidnapping, murder, and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Interesting story. I know that after 15 years, they did, I guess you could say, reinstate trick or treating in Oil City, PA. But yeah, what a sad story that just wreaked havoc on the town. As we said, it's just a small town of 9,000 people. And not only just the one case, but there were several different issues that came across in the years to follow. Something I thought was interesting doing the research on this. After a certain amount of time that goes by, if it's not solved, it's considered a cold case. And it was said that less than 1% of cold cases are ever solved. So the fact that this was ever solved to begin with was uh, nothing short of just amazing and lucky. And, I was listening to an interview by the mom that I thought was pretty telling. Basically, just saying that, as sad as it is that she's dead, it's more of a relief to know she's dead than to, wonder what happened. She's basically talking about kidnapped children that are never found and just how that would be even worse. That was kind of telling, but yeah, crazy. Think about all the kids in the town.
Yeah, one thing that I thought about throughout this whole thing, after I mentioned earlier that her mom forgot to get her the ride home, the guilt that she's gonna carry the rest of her life.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing. That's gonna be rough to have to question yourself on that every day for the rest of your life. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's things happen, unfortunately. I don't think it's ever one specific thing that leads to it, but just a series of events. So yeah, that's the case of Shauna Howe in the state of PA. So again, we want to just take a second to
I wanted to mention one more thing. Now, with our hometown, we had a lot of problems with the cops, right? With in our case, we had a lot of problems with the cops. They very incompetent. They made a lot of wrong moves before finally catching the guy.
right.
Now, talking about Drew's hometown, hopefully he doesn't know any of these cops. I mean, he's a younger guy, so he probably won't know the people that were on the case, but they really fucked up. I just don't get how they thought these guys were in jail at the time. It seems like something so easy to look up, but yet they never did. They never looked into it. They just figured they're in jail because they're two pieces of shit.
But it turns out that they never were. And yeah, like you said, I feel like that would be a really easy check, like a double check. Like, hey, let's just to be sure. Are you sure about that? Let's make sure. And no one ever took that 5 minutes to double check. And if they had, this case could have been solved years prior. So yeah, I agree with you. I thought that was pretty baffling. That no one just took that 5 minutes to just double check to be absolutely sure.
I
And
wonder how many of these cold cases that aren't solved that are because the police are just dumbasses.
yeah, or just how many could have just, if someone would have just taken that 5 minutes elsewhere and something else related to the case. Yeah. And shout out to that police officer. You said his name was Rich, who just
Rich Graham. Yep.
really became obsessed and really dug into this case. Without Rich, who knows if these two would have ever been caught. So yeah, definitely a big shout out to our guy Rich for doing his thing on this one. So with all that being said, that's our case of the week, Shauna Howe in Oil City, Pennsylvania. We talked about some things to do and things to see. I know you mentioned personally that you want to get out there and see Gettysburg one of these days, Mr. Gettysburg yourself. And you got the Liberty Bell, Hershey Park, lots of other things to do out there as well. And I always like to have you recap the state from your own opinion and let us know, as a person of interest, how you would rank a state on your desirability. Now, I know this one's a little bit different because you've actually already been there. So feel free to take your already personal experiences into account. But I'll throw it back to you. What do you think about PA? And ultimately, where would you put it on your list?
Yeah, if I haven't been there, I mean, I've been there 4 or 5 times. If I hadn't been there that many times already, it would definitely be a top 10 for me. But I'm gonna have to put it in the middle. Um, I want to go see Gettysburg. It's the most famous battlefield in our country, and I'm big into old war stuff and all the ghost stories that have happened there, all the hauntings and stuff.
Yeah.
Some of the biggest clues of paranormal activity have been recorded at Gettysburg, so I want to see that for myself.
Okay.
Something you didn't mention was the Flight 93 Memorial. I know there's not much there. I actually don't know what is there. It's probably just a hole in the ground, but like to go see that.
Okay.
Hershey Park, from the pictures, gives an old Jug Lake kind of feel, so I would want to go see that. Um, I'll have to put, not counting what I've seen in PA already, I put it number 14 for what I do want to see.
Ooh, 14. Okay, nice. That's a good ranking, especially considering you've already been there once, multiple times. So cool. All right. I personally big fan of PA myself. It sucks that I hate the football team so much because I love Pittsburgh. I've always had a great time, great food. It's always fun. So yeah, I enjoy it. And it's a hop, skip, and jump away from us. You could get there in 90 minutes or less. So as we begin our departure from the state of PA in conclusion of episode 21 of 50 States, 50 Murders, we want to continue to thank you, the listener, for tuning in. Each and every week, we will continue covering a new state as well as a murder case that took place there.
If you've not already, please be sure to follow and subscribe and tune in next week for episode 22. And have a happy and safe Halloween.
Happy Halloween.